I'm going to show you how females are showing how the nature we are together is greater than us. There's also right to left, attached to what is inherently different, but not different, as what is valued, as difference. And males are left to right. And this is because the portion in temporary value nature is omega. And the complete portion, is a phenomenon of what manifests as omega in relationship to a being on the other side of diffusion, and then the alpha. And so in other words, omega, alpha, and then the omega, and then the alpha and omega together are valued together, and then connects at Z, at X, as negative or positive value nature. And then at Z, with the top of the Z, forcing evolution, positive value nature change, positive environmental change. At the bottom of the Z, length of Hadith, forcing space nature transfer of our value, our nature. Our semi-memory, what is complete memory by it. This is what the ancients revealed English to teach. So we have trees in life that comes overall up. And this is in demonstration too. And though the rest of the nature has no criminal persuasions, especially no criminally legalized persuasions. And so the cartoons on this channel, youtube.com/user/Romulus Wall. This is about American Revolution. We're going to talk about history, but we're going to show how we lost on campus fronts. And so we have a solution at the same time. We're going to show what we lost to an archetypal criminal enterprise, a breaching method. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a criminal, I'm not a police form, I'm not a military form. English. Predicate is showing a constant positive relationship that positive will only have to itself inherently, actively, and progressively. With it as value in relationship to what identity is about. The predicate act is only temporary lasting, inherently, actively, and progressively negative relationship to itself. The identity, which is shared. That's why we have male, female, species, body greater than it. It's for correlation, for an active form of correlation called ratiocination. And this has been, colonization, for example, was, when I say this is not just for, I repeat, this is not because of the reason it's a good phrase or whatever. Colonization, sentence. Colonization was engineered to stay dissolved, functional, per fact treatment method, per organized crime method against fact treatment natures, into all areas, having it blamed on other perpetually. This is why we're still in colonization's homes styles, before they had crazy laws in the north. No, before our founders were even born. If they met, in other words, a colonist could drop a tree. I said this too before. The colonist could drop a tree, but he can't lift it himself. In other words, a big long tree. They had them, Then you can build a home, better, safer, bigger, nicer, But they just get each other to help it, put it in place, and then lock it in. You know what I mean? But they had laws against that. They had laws that, because they had internation sciences here before our founders were even born. This is why George Washington had to get the French general, who was also counter-extorted every United nation. We're the last ones to fall. But we fell too. We'll still stay. That's why our founders were all forced to share states of nations attached to internation sciences playing roles with what was areas first. Even kings don't understand it because it was set up that way. Our leaders have to react in relationship to terrorists. and juxtaposed internation gangs, internation criminal enterprises only originally juxtaposed to our areas, uncharged, juxtaposed with the criminally legalized ones, and juxtaposed with the methods by that and through the live progressions with the evidence cover-up natures, evidence fabrication natures to all areas, misprision criminality, engineered, knowing that every person in it is an Oz, not really how they're going to have live progression. Then they have the investigations woven through that. In other words, CT is cherry tree, Connecticut is cherry tree. That's why George Washington had to meet in Wethersfield, Connecticut, right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War, right near Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut. This is related to the pike before the heart of Hartford, right where it ends, right and begins. Though it begins right where J.P. Morgan's grave is, with Cedar Hill Cemetery. He had J.P. Morgan had to loan money to the government to fight the world wars. But I said, as a banker, that was measured. What was with that too, though, was what carried over that our founders didn't have free speech even in letters against. And they left proofs that even after the Constitutional Convention, free speech was abridged. And we're supposed to explain this, but instead we have that the criminal and seriousness theater that was forced on them to hide their roles with the Constitutional Convention. And with Marbury versus Madison that came after it. No, after it. But with James Madison as our original Chief Justice before that. This is our founding father, James Madison. Not just because of Marbury versus Madison, because he's the one with the plan with George Washington. He was the first sitting justice. George Washington was before he was general, he was a first bailiff too. And they were all counter-extorted. And they had to fight now. Because they would have been killed for even... They had laws, forget about if you met to discuss a revolution. But if you met to even discuss building houses outside of the styles they want built, they built. Before our founders were even born. Here, we had no cars. This is still the way they played it out. Because they knew that if they denatured human relationship to the they're playing off ancient revelations. They knew that if they denatured our relationship to nature, and then they invested, business-wise, and everyone blaming on other trained to through the campuses, but through everyone be victim predator. So and now everyone hurt conviction natures, hurt breaching nature against each other, breaching nature roles. This is how they had the crazy laws with colonization, and they know how to explain it. So then they just go to slavery, and they make that a physical delusion attached to the war about it. But because they can't speak for the truth related to it, because they don't understand how to. The only way to explain it is to understand the recorded extortion of our founders. And the criminal insidiousness nature lies and progressions with that, forced on them categorically, sequentially, and they want us to demonstrate that. They'll have clues, so it's like decipher. CT is cherry. I always forget to do the fortune cookie. I don't know how much time is it. So let's do the fortune cookie. Now. You must look into people as well at them. You must look into people as well as at them. There's a grammar mistake. You must look into people is a complete clause, independent sentence. Then they put a comma, and then after the comma says a well as at them. As well as at them. Oh, so they forgot the S on the A. And then it would be properly, because it would be an independent clause with the independent then see, independent clause. You don't separate two. You don't attach two independent clauses with a comma. That would be a run-on sentence. Not because it would be a run-on sentence. Is not why they do that. If you wanted to attach two independent clauses, we use a colon, which the colon. There are proofs that the colon was really originally named the victory, or Victoria. In other words, three natures of the colon, even though it doesn't change, three natures of the Native Americans' relationship to the beaver. See, if we use ratiocination, we understand the sequence nature. We understand how to see, discern more. And, you take away what's not real, then you start seeing what you can't see. So we have to get another, because they must say. So the point is a reason that everything grows up. The females is just so we could, for correlation, active form of correlation, inherently, actively, and progressively. Is for correlation. We're a correlation nature. So we're supposed to, at the same time, be able to discern something inherently, actively, and progressively together. Not just as male, female, in the body of value we are together, but as not just as male, female, and the body of value we are as a species together, but using that for correlation. And in relationship to the rest of nature with no criminal persuasions. And with our means to be different instead, to be advanced. Identity has positive value always, which causes evolution. It causes realized pressure, the means for it. We connect as positive identity that is also positive onto itself, inherently, actively, and progressively. Then we connect as the rest of space's body, like a little part of its body, and what is positive to it. So it increases us inherently, actively, and progressively, which means we didn't see before. It's evolution. But you have to see this course, the way the nations were taken from the ratiocination stations and built into identities that were overextended before they were built. You know what I mean? And so now everyone's only realized to roles with this. Before they did this, through the pseudo-sophistication, looking at the areas left exploited, victims of campuses criminally re-engineered. Fake, everyone just contrasts. It hurt too, because there's a method against fact treatment in nature of all ages, distinctly and together, and with areas. So psychology has to go. So I'm not a doctor, but they're recorded with evidence fabrication roles, torture roles, and with delusion propagation roles since before our nation founded internation, with the jails, with database crimes, with evidence fabrication rackets, evidence witness rackets, everything. There's a geopolitical organized crime originally and stayed uncharged with the geopolitical prison structure and with our state structures, to even down to where they talk about North and South and about slavery in relationship to the Civil War, which has nothing to do with the truth of it. The truth is a breaching organized crime. They were all slaveries. You know what I mean? So if you say that they were classifying white people too, they hurt everybody. No, boys, I'm not white. My skin's not white, and I've never seen a black person in my life. You know what I mean? Because these are games for fact treatment, against fact treatment. Because we entertain that, then you're gonna defend the logic entertained. And from the campuses out, the ancients knew that this caused negative value nature progressions. Is with Adam and Eve is used to teach about. Because Adam is the subject and Eve is the verb. So we go into that. And when we talk about the predicate, is always a positive valuation to itself. Predicate act caused by the internation criminal enterprises, always a negative value nature relationship to itself. So you say, well, that was interstate. Those things was caused by internation. In other words, breaching method using us as its army. That's what's everything's a bridge. Every single modern nation lost to this. So we're forced to share negotiations and justifications of fact treatments with business relationships that are forged from criminally, these aren't our standards. These aren't. We're still in homes that they couldn't build any better or safer with before our founders were born, and they didn't even have cars. And that was set up demonstrably because they knew that this nature itself would cause negative value nature progressions and demonstration of it, because nature only has one system that's overall and it works. And so they knew that if they could get everyone to blame it on other things and be invested to do it because that's business, that's what everyone's taught, it's still criminally legalized. In other words, they can make standing criminal insidiousness natures and breaching roles and employ that further, and then weave investigations through that. And they have methods by us, every nation. That's why the Quran warns. What the Quran warns against, instead of warning against it, the states are pushing because they have roles with lie progression, cover up needs. Only let realized take it to the states. Everybody, every victim predators, and then they have to cover it up. So we have states progressively, inherently, actively, and progressively defending only and fighting only to defend means to hide and to justify what was never justifiable, to hide lies, delusions, premises, and criminal persuasions, criminally legalized persuasions. And then saying that is what keeps it worse than that, but letting it get it away, to cultivate it deeper. And then down to the final, with things like with attacks, like with the internation attacks, like with September 11 and stuff like that. This was geopolitical. In other words, it wasn't sourced by one nation. It's what's forcing nations to get hurt if they try to bring ratiocination to fact treatments abridged at the international level. And the media is that's why they had the media already inwardly extorted, because they had them aware of all kinds of evidence or crime rolls with it. Down to the areas, worst natures of it, and they just pretend it's on other, because and the sequence shift, and we have strangers juxtaposed to needs to tell the lies against the same, on a mass scale against strangers, with mass evidence brackets, mass database crimes brackets, original and stayed. And so it was a breaching method that was set up here before our founders. That's why George Washington had to meet. We're right here and counter extort them, but he could only do that to an extent because the internation science is there. The Hartford Hospital with Trinity College used to be George Washington College. He was still extorted. Even after he died, they didn't have free speech. They couldn't say, oh. And even James Madison had to go sue. He had to hide. He was the guy who was our founder, and he had to be the plaintiff. You know what I mean? Because they still had. Their free speech was abridged. Their religious rights were abridged. Their safety was. They were extorted. They were being murdered. So to understand, we have to understand the organized crime breaching method, or as an organized crime, and we must understand the criminal insidiousness nature caused by that, And see, this is what the Old Testament and what the Quran are trying to make us have the ability to have a conversation to do, but they also have the religions invested to what they, not to geopolitical campus industry. They call it scholars and they pretend. That's why the Quran says to stay focused on the Quran. If you do that before any of the debatable parts, the person, the non-believer or the believer, has the right to disagree as long as they're being truthful. As long as they're being truthful. And they don't think that's what God would want, as positive always. But then when you get to the controversial parts, now how could you say that? You say, well, because the defense of the body of Saudi Arabia is distinct from the defense of the body of the Quran. And that's in relationship to the nature that is inherently, actively, and progressively unchanging, but in demonstration with the only overall cause. This is with the same thing with the Old Testament. That's why the Old Testament says right in the beginning, if you understand this little part in the beginning of the Genesis, right in the first page, then that's all you need to know. And you have to know because with the sciences share an identity, and this is what it's about. And and principally with the law, that's why the predicate act is something that's demonstrating a temporary, lasting, inherently, actively, and progressive negative value, nature, relationship to the self as an identity, and with the predicate as an identity. That's why Adam and Eve are brought into this a bunch of ways. Reason why the predicate is always a positive value, nature, relationship to itself. So a verb is only a predicate when it's used as a main verb, when it has its independent nature is let. When a verb is not used as main verb, it's not just because of the independent nature, but it's a nature, it's a positive relationship to itself, which is the thing. When a verb is not used as a main verb, then it becomes a participle nature or an infinitive nature. Its identity of value changes. See, we have an identity of value, which every science is about obfuscating. You have each science pretending to be stupid, per criminal insidiousness, per criminal persuasions that were criminally legalized, and then invested, trained. So they've been, in other words, that's why they did things. They played roles with like things like slavery, but they were foreign, entrenched here before our founders' births. That's why they play roles with it, which is still slavery, with the books. When they blame it on other, and when they threaten this and they're still putting people in jail with fake information to hide the truth from this. Because we're still breached. It's still connected to a method that has still fake patriotism charged as a criminal insidiousness nature, knowing that it's got areas, persuasions, criminal persuasion just brings it to everyone's a hurt victim predator. With evidence rackets, database relationships that we were supposed to end. And we have to do that. So.